Hey fellow duelists, it's RagingRaidRaptor here, coming at you with part 2 of my Deskbot Deck Guide, where I will now talk about the tech cards you might want to consider running. Starting with an engine comprising of Ancient Gear Catapult, Wyvern and Gearbox. This engine can give you a tremendous amount of consistency, as Wyvern can search a copy of Gearbox when it is summoned, to which Gearbox can search an Earth attribute monster from your deck. However, if you were able to summon Wyvern with the effective Catapult, then even better, as you will be able to normal summon Gearbox, then gain an additional search by summoning Gear Giant X. However, there are some major downsides to this engine, with one of them being Gearbox being completely useless if you draw it in your opening hand or during your draw phase, and Catapult needing you to have no monsters and a face-up card on your field to destroy to use its effect. For these reasons, I would personally suggest testing the ratios to see what works for you if you decide to run this engine. Moving over to what was one of the best engines in the game, the Kaiju engine. This engine works incredibly well with this deck, as you can use the effect of Interrupted Kaiju Slumber to wipe out your opponent's field of monsters, then give your opponent a Kaiju monster that can easily be taken out with the effect of Deskbot 4 to get its effect off. However, due to the limitation of Interrupted Kaiju Slumber, being able to draw it is significantly less likely than when it was at 2. And you might want to drop it entirely for instances where you might run out of Kaijus in your deck. However, the Kaiju monsters are still very good for getting rid of difficult to get over boss monsters such as Firewall Dragon, and can also provide an easy monster for Deskbot 4 to get over with its effect. The next suggestion is Gen X Ally Birdman, a card that is still at limited status for reasons I do not know, which is a shame considering that it really helps this deck, as you can use it to bring back your copies of Deskbot 4 and then use it for a synchro summon with the monster you summoned with Deskbot 3's effect. Also, the fact that this card can be searched with the effect of Gear Giant X makes this card worth considering. The next set of suggestions are both Cyber Dragon Nova and Infinity, as you can summon them with 2 Deskbot 5s. The only effect that Nova has that is not tied to the Cyber Dragon archetype is that it can special summon any machine fusion monster from your extra deck when it is sent to the graveyard by your opponent's card effect while it is in your possession, meaning that you can use this effect if your opponent used Solemn Strike on the summon of this card. However, the real star here is Cyber Dragon Infinity, which you can summon by overlaying it on top of Nova. The first effect makes this card gain 200 attack for each Xyz material attached to this card, which may not seem that impressive until you see its second effect, which is made even better because of Link monsters, as it allows you to target any face-up attack position monster on the field and attach that monster to Infinity as Xyz material, meaning that this card attack could potentially go up to Infinity and beyond. However, this is never really going to happen because of its third effect, which allows you to negate the effect of any card, then destroy it by detaching one material from it, which is fantastic as it can provide protection for the rest of your Deskbot cards. And while I'm on the topic of dragons, the next suggestion is Odd Eye's Meteor Burst Dragon. Although it's not a shiny mechanical dragon, or as good as Cyber Dragon Infinity, this card is still worth considering, as its first effect allows you to special summon any pendulum monster in your pendulum zone, giving you a way to special summon high level Deskbot monsters during your main phase 1, without pendulum summoning them. Although this card will not be able to attack the turn you use this effect. However, its second effect is what really helps this deck, as it prevents your opponent from using any monster effects during the battle phase, which is excellent since it can prevent your opponents from using floating effects like the Burning Abyss archetype when they are destroyed in battle, which is the main way Deskbots deal with difficult monsters. And while on the topic of synchro monsters, the next suggestion is Materia Beast, as you can summon this card with Deskbot 1 and 4 or YuGiOh or Accelerator, and has an incredible effect. This effect allows you to negate the effect of any spell card and destroy it, at the cost of milling the top 2 cards from your deck, which is fantastic considering how many decks need spell cards in order to get their decks running, and not being limited to only once per turn can definitely make this card more abusable than monsters like number 39, and being able to deck thin does also help with giving you extra consistency. The next suggestion is actually a floodgate, and that is Rivalry of Warlords. This card was a very good meta call during the Monarch/Cosmo format, as this card forces both players into only being able to control one type of monster, while also sending other monsters that are not the same type to the graveyard if they were on the field when this card was activated, which worked incredibly well against those decks since it used monsters that were different types, while also not crippling Deskbots too much since all of their monsters are machine type. And speaking of floodgates, the next suggestion is Battle of the Elements. Although this is not continuous like Rivalry of Warlords, it is still incredibly powerful and can potentially bring your opponent's deck to a halt, as it forces both players to only select one monster attribute, then send any monsters that are not that attribute to the graveyard, which works incredibly well against decks that rely on monsters that have different attributes from each other, like Yang Zing's Arrow Mages or World Chalice, while also not helping your field if all of your monsters are Deskbots. However, the downside to this card is that all the monsters have to be face up to use it, although this might not be a problem since most monsters are special summoned to the field. In my Can Be Better video about Deskbots, I said that I thought they should have a card similar to Voidseer that can offer protection for the archetype that would be searchable with the effect of Deskbot 2. Unfortunately, we still do not have such a card, but you can still play this card, Magnet Force, as it can make any rock or machine monster on your field unaffected by your opponent's monster effects for that turn, which is excellent since most decks use monster effects to get rid of problem cards, especially if you have a copy of Deskbot 4 on the field, as it can increase its attack points more than once per turn. However, the downsides to this card are that it is a trap card, making it much slower than the previously mentioned Voidseer, and that it is not searchable in this deck, which makes it harder to access. Now at this point you might be wondering why I have not mentioned any of the other Deskbot cards yet. Well, I will now, starting with the first one, Deskbot 1. This card has two effects, with its first one allowing it to gain 500 attack and defense points for every machine type monster on your field, including itself, meaning that it can potentially increase itself to 2,500 points with its effect alone. However, what makes this card worth considering is that it can special summon itself from the graveyard whenever 2 or more machine type monsters are special summoned at the same time, except during the battle phase, meaning that you can use this effect when you pendulum summon 2 Deskbot monsters or special summon 2 Deskbot monsters with the effect of machine duplication, and is not limited to once per turn, meaning that you can chain 2 of them together if you have 2 of them in the graveyard. Also, being a tuner does give you access to synchro monsters. However, the downsides to this card are that you cannot pendulum summon it with the Deskbot pendulum monsters, as the lowest scale they have is 1, and the pendulum mechanic only allows you to special summon monsters whose levels are in between these set scale numbers. Also, because the card text says if 2 or more machine type monsters are summoned at the same time while this card is in your graveyard, except during the damage step, means that you can't use this effect if you summon 2 Deskbot monsters with the effect of 4. The next suggestion is Deskbot 6. This card's pendulum effect prevents you from pendulum summoning any monster that is not a Deskbot monster, which is built into the pendulum effects of the rest of the Deskbot monsters, which really did suck during the Arc V era, since its ceiling was drastically lower than other pendulum decks that could fill up their extra decks with pendulum monsters faster than this deck. However, with the new Master Rules, this is not as much of an issue, since every pendulum deck has been negatively affected by it, and Deskbots didn't pendulum summon that much to begin with. The first monster effect of Deskbot 6 allows you to switch the battle position of any monster when it is summoned, which works incredibly well in combination with Deskbot 4, as you can use that effect to special summon both a copy of Deskbot 4 and 6, then switch the newly summoned Deskbot 4 into attack mode to destroy another monster in battle, and summon 2 more Deskbot monsters with its effect, giving you a full field of monsters to potentially Synchro, XZ and Link summon, as well as getting rid of 2 of your opponent's monsters, which is an extremely powerful play if you ask me. Its second effect allows you to add a copy of any Deskbot card from your graveyard to your hand if it is destroyed in your pendulum zone, which can provide you with an additional resource if you destroy it with the effect of 5 or Jet. The next pendulum monster is Deskbot 7. This card has 3 effects, with the first one being that it can increase its attack points for every Deskbot card in your graveyard, which definitely makes this card better during the mid to late game, especially when you consider that its third effect allows you to inflict piercing damage to your opponent when it attacks your opponent's defense position monster, which comes in handy in the rare instance when your opponent controls a monster that cannot be destroyed in battle. Its second effect prevents your opponent from attacking any other Deskbot monster you control, which can be problematic if your opponent controls 2 of them, since it will prevent your opponent from attacking any of your Deskbot monsters. The next pendulum monster is Deskbot 8, probably the best one to have during the mid to late game, as this card also gains 500 attack points for every Deskbot monster in your graveyard. However, this card's effect gives it more potential for monster removal, as its third effect allows it to make 2 attacks on your opponent's monsters. If that wasn't impressive enough, this card prevents your opponent from targeting any of your Deskbot cards with the exception of itself, which will be even more problematic for your opponent if you control 2 of them at the same time, as it will prevent your opponent from using any targeting effects on your Deskbot monsters. The next Deskbot monster is Deskbot 9, which weirdly isn't a pendulum monster. The first effect of this card allows it to increase its attack equal to all of the attack points of every Deskbot monster you control, with the exception of itself, until the end of your opponent's turn. However, if you do this, it will be the only monster you can attack with on that turn. However, its second effect prevents your opponent from using any card effect until the end of the damage step when this card attacks, which will prevent your opponent from using cards like Mirror Force. The last effect of this card allows you to tribute another Deskbot monster to prevent this card from being destroyed. The last Deskbot monster is Deskbot Jet, the only extra deck monster within the archetype. Its first effect allows it to gain 500 attack points for every Deskbot card on your side of the field, including itself, which can help you OTK your opponent if you have more Deskbot monsters on the field, which can be made easier with its third effect, which allows you to destroy any Deskbot card you control to destroy one of your opponent's cards, or special summon any Deskbot monster from your deck for the same cost. However, you can only choose one of these effects once per turn. Well, that is the end of my deck guide for Deskbots. If you feel I've overlooked any suggestions for tech cards within the archetype, let me know in the comment section below. If you did enjoy this video, why not give it a like or share it with your friends? It would be greatly appreciated and would help the growth of the channel as a whole. I've been RagingRaidRaptor and I'll see you all again next time.